Barcelona, Barcelona. Barcelona, Barcelona.
Estás escuchando Sucias Aventuras Armenias. Hey everyone, it's your host Alec Mohibian with a quick note before we begin. Filthy Armenian Adventures is an interdimensional travel program that takes you deep into the cultural mysteries of our strange and interesting times. In search of truth, in search of gold, in search of lost friends and unsung heroes, in search of John Galt's motor. The show is supported entirely by patrons at patreon.com/filthyarmenian. Patrons get access to twice as many adventures, including the most intimate and scandalous ones, plus regular 5 to 15 minute smoke break mini episodes on movies, shows, and topics of the urgent moment. Patrons also get first dibs on our next live event. The first two were a smash. It's very easy to keep Filthy Armenian Adventures alive. You can still listen to the premium feed on Apple or Spotify or your favorite app, and you can do so with the pride that you're putting a little bit of money where your soul is. More patrons means more landmarks, more hotspots, more secret locations, and forbidden territories around the world, and the world that is Los Angeles, our apocalyptic headquarters. It means we'll be able to track down more enchanting figures in the landscape and dare them to abandon their masks. Patreon.com/filthyarmenian. Gracias for listening, and enjoy the show. There's a feeling in the air like the 1950s fear of atomic attack. The emotional equivalent of a very low, very dark hum. A room tone of something's not right, but we've lost the ability to name it, so we're just going to scream scary words. People are building bunkers. They're looking for what to stock up in those bunkers. They're deciding whom to let in. They're taking inventory. Or they are looking at everyone building the bunkers and taking the inventory and thinking, these people are nuts. We don't disagree. We sense the bunkers would be useless if things got physical, but we're building them anyway. We're building them anyway because it gives us something to do, something to measure, and it's good for the economy. It opens opportunities for generosity and camaraderie and making up for lost time, and so protects us from the kinds of atomic weapons that are not physical. We have been living in a state of techno-futuristic civil unrest, a mostly peaceful state of civil unrest, mostly peaceful, unlike our private unrest. Tonight's adventure takes place in a city that is no stranger to civil unrest, or to uncivil unrest, or to rest. In the eyes of many, it's a city where the first marquee ideological whole-showing scrimmage of the 20th century was staged, When the Spanish Civil War broke out in 1936, every writer intellectual from Hemingway to Dos Passos to George Orwell made a beeline for Barcelona to fight against the fascists. For most of these intellectuals, fighting meant writing, or maybe taking film. For George Orwell, it meant joining any leftist militia that would accept him. Posing as a writer, he was permitted into the ranks of the POUM, a militia of anti-Stalin communists fighting on the side of the Stalin-supported Republican government. The charcuterie of militias identified as various degrees of communist, socialist, and anarchist, and held somewhat differing views on a timetable for revolution. But they shared one absolutely common cause: to defeat the nationalist forces of General Franco. Orwell, more anti-fascist than pro-anything at the time, joined them in that cause and took a bullet for that cause in the throat. His reward? His reward upon returning to Barcelona was to be wanted by the government he was fighting for as a spy. The May Days had begun. The communist government began to censor everything and lock up or kill anyone who dissented in any way from the party line. For the idealists who came down there, this was the moment leftism showed its hole, a hole they lost any reason to claim was smoother or looser or freer than the hole of fascism. John Dos Passos, the most explicitly left-wing of the artists on hand, became profoundly conservative as a result of the Spanish Civil War. Hemingway fled responsibility for what he saw and simply moved on to his next selfish adventure. George Orwell recorded everything in Homage to Catalonia. The experience turned him into the Orwell that we know. But as you can tell from the first word of his title, Orwell did not leave his ideals behind in Barcelona. He left as more of a socialist believer than ever before, even as he knew now, as never before, the totalitarian destiny of movements in its name. This belief would never stop contaminating and confusing Orwell's political writing, but he became a forceful and eternal critic of totalitarianism regardless, because he was that almost impossible of creatures, an honest socialist. The socialism that remained in his heart was the one he glimpsed during the fleeting honeymoon phase of his time in Catalonia, and it was a souvenir of the Spanish character. Everybody knows that I have nothing but hate and contempt for the kind of socialism that Orwell pursued in Barcelona, but the kind he briefly experienced that left him so wedded to its ideal is not completely unrelated to the kind of socialism I pursue in Barcelona. Nighttime socialism. The socialism of the dance floor when there's a good DJ at 3 a.m. Nothing to do with the daytime political socialism which led to so much censorship, paranoia, snitching, lies, and betrayal and bloodshed, but something to do with Barcelona. The one city on the planet where the pre-2020 way of life seems to be preserved, at least in the summer, at least at night, at least to the eyes of an idealistic tourist. So here are slices of two different Barcelonas. The one Orwell experienced in 1937, interspersed with the one I experienced with my friend Gum Arabic on a languid night last summer. And two different, but not entirely different, socialisms. And while I don't like playing around with words that have an evil history and are still stirring evil to this day, I am displaying the S word as an alternate temporary name for my ideal out of respect to George Orwell. A great man. A man who made of honesty a vocation. A man I'd welcome at any hour of the night with open arms and cigarettes into my bunker.
Are you sick or are you, is it just allergies?
I don't know, I just sneezed 30 times in a row.
Yeah, but isn't that an allergy? Is it sneezing allergies?
Probably. But I did take all my allergy meds. Would you think Barcelona is a place where there's allergens everywhere?
There's a lot of things, you know. I feel like why not? Because it's very thing heavy. It's got things, it's got like scent smells, it's got like sulfuric water smells coming out of, you know, it's like, it's just like
A lot of chemistry.
A lot of chemistry, a lot of Europe. There's just a lot of Europe going on here.
Yeah.
In many ways, it's like the dream of, it's like this is where like the dream of Europe is still alive. The only place maybe where it's still alive.
Not Berlin?
No. Berlin's not about the dream of Europe. Berlin's about its own, like, but Berlin's about the cruelty of Europe. And how the cruelty of Europe can be, like, clearly, almost like clearly experienced and seen and, like, walked among and you still survive. But it's not about, like, the good part of Europe.
Which is what? The mixing?
Well, which is, yeah, the fantasy of mixing the various European countries without being crushed by Arabs. Which, you know, there are Arabs here, there are like Africans here.
Yep.
But it doesn't seem to be crushing the place.
Yeah.
Even though there's a lot of them.
Well, we see a lot of them right now because we're sitting at this restaurant.
Which is, we're like in Little Arabia, part of Barcelona.
Yeah, I see a lot of women in the wearing a hijab.
But what I don't see is a like clear conflicting element to it. Like I don't see the menacing thing that you see in Berlin with the Turks or in most European cities. France, obviously. Even London, there's like, you know, London has an edge at all times, almost. When I say an edge, I just mean like there's a certain like austerity to London. It's like it's not. This is intoxicating. And one of the toxins are Arabs. This is very much like...
That's a strong motherfucking coffee.
Yeah, it is. I'm probably going to be up all night now. But I should stop drinking it. This is a lot like... So, yeah, I mean, to me, this is a place where, like, the dream of Europe is still alive. People are, quote-unquote, being European here, too, you know? The whole thing where you eat late, where time is on a different schedule here.
Seems even locals are. I mean, it seems like most people that are out and about are local.
Well, is it famously, like, Spain is known for with people having dinner really late, sleeping in afternoons, not working much. living on a different, like it's the European pleasure style of living.
I'm very into it.
Also, it feels like this is the one city that's been completely unchanged since the pandemic. It doesn't feel any different to me than before. And that includes last year, when I was here.
Do you know that guy, Rodrigo or whatever, told me at that last place? The guy from Mexico? He's like, I'm coming to LA in September to get the vaccine. He's like,
what?
Yeah. I'm like, really? He's like, yeah. He's like, I get the booster every 6 months. He's like, I got COVID 4 times. And I was like, well, is the vaccine helping?
Vaccination. It's a vaccine vacation. Vaccination.
Vaxication.
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 Vaxication. People are so weird, man.
I mean,
I've stopped even asking about like I just don't even get into it.
It was very surprising. But he also was like literally saying that he's like, I have every drug right now. So,
including J&J,
Moderna.
Queer, the affection you can feel for a stranger. It was as though his spirit and mine had momentarily succeeded in bridging the gulf of language and tradition and meeting in utter intimacy. I hoped he liked me as well as I liked him, but I also knew that to retain my first impression of him, I must not see him again, and needless to say, I never did see him again. One was always making contacts of that kind in Spain.
What are your feelings about Barcelona at this moment, on this trip?
So 4th time visiting.
Yeah.
And I think I've been here with family. I went here for a music festival, Primavera Sound, where Frank Ocean famously canceled with me for the 2nd time. And then this is my most just like getting let loose, just do whatever, no agenda, no park well.
Yeah.
So it's just like
no Sagrada Familia.
No Sagrada Familia, no like midday hike I have to take before having to try to eat dinner at night. So thankfully, pretty well energized. We didn't get out of the hotel until what, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock tonight?
Yeah, that was great.
Couldn't get a nasal spray because
everything's closed. Because of some Catholic holiday.
Respect.
The Feast of the Assumption. You assumed they were open.
Well, you know what they say about an assumption.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, part of the other all of Europe thing is like it has like it seems to have like every kind of European city mixed together in it too, like in the neighborhoods, like this new neighborhood, this Jambla area that we're staying in, which is also like the gay area, and like the wider streets, the newer, developed, expanded.
It's called Jambla?
Yeah, it's spelled like example. It's like
okay.
It's called Jambla, I think, which I think means expansion or something.
Okay.
I think it's how when they expanded from the the old town type of thing.
Yeah.
And it's like the streets look more like Paris.
Yeah.
And the buildings do too. And so you've got that now, kind of as the center, and then you've got a still, it's obviously super touristy but it's still an active, like the Gothic area and all the Gothic areas, which includes like Elborn, Gothic center, and then also Reval, are like actually they're actually like lived in places.
Yeah.
And yet they're like super medieval looking,
Yeah.
And then up until recently, and then you have the hipster area. You have like the more hipster area, which is What's the one? What is it on the top, like north, right under Park Güell, that area? What the fuck is it called? It's something with an M.
Gracia?
Gracia, that's right. There's not a single M in the entire word. Gracia, and then you got so that's the hipster area, and you got all kinds of outgrowths that I don't even know about. They're resident, they're local for locals and not tourists. You obviously got the really pretty Montjuic, whatever, hilly area that we were last night.
Yep.
It has also the Olympic Stadium, Montjuic, I think. You got Park Güell. You've got You've got like the Magic Kingdom, Sagrada Familia, which is like as these Baroque ass things go, Gothic things go, it's really impressive. I mean, it is kind of mind blowing. It truly, there's nothing like it anywhere, and like it has a sort of like, I mean, I feel like Gaudi is like really the founder of Disney. Like if you look at that, if you look at the Gaudi house, it looks just like a Disneyland creation. I don't know if there's an actual influence on Walt Disney, but I wouldn't be surprised at all, because it feels like the real version of Disney. When Disney was like good, when Disney had a signature, So you got all that. You kind of got like lots of different times represented, given these different neighborhoods. They each kind of represent their own time period in history. There's another area next to Montjuic on the bottom that I'm also forgetting the name of. But then to me, one of the interesting parts is Raval, which when I first came here in 2016 or 15, and I accidentally ended up there because you can just you get lost in the very narrow streets of the Gothic area, and if you just go one way from Ramblas instead of the other way, you end up in Raval. You're immediately in Raval, and Raval was straight up like old style slum, where I suddenly found myself in a square with all kinds of menacing people looking around at me, all kinds of whores going. They do that like mouth sound with their, the whores here. And like all of a sudden I'm like, oh, where the hell am I? And there was like a really cool bar that looked like it's from the 20s, like a Hemingway style bar. I think it probably was something we used to attend or whatever. I bet you it's still there. I'll find the name, but there was that really cool bar full of people, but then like 2 steps away from it, you feel like you're being like surrounded by, and it was like I felt like I was literally slumming it in a good way. It was a little scary.
Yeah.
And since then I think they've cleaned it up completely. I think like Raval is all clean now.
Is it?
Yeah. It's all nice hotels, boutique hotels, and restaurants and stuff. But there's I don't think there's any more of. They were calling it migrant type of.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah. So you love Barcelona?
I do. But there are certain. I mean, it's a place where also, and as touristy as these as touristy as the experience of it is, that's still something. Like where if a place has a very specific tourist layer to it for visitors, that counts too.
Yeah. I love when there's tourists in LA.
But I would sooner be a foreigner in Spain than in most countries. How easy it is to make friends in Spain. Within a day or two, there was a score of militiamen who called me by my Christian name, showed me the ropes, and overwhelmed me with hospitality. I defy anyone to be thrown as I was among the Spanish working class. I ought perhaps to say the Catalan working class, for apart from a few Aragonese and Andalusians I mixed only with Catalans, and not be struck by their essential decency, above all, their straightforwardness and generosity. A Spaniard's generosity, in the ordinary sense of the word, is at times almost embarrassing. If you ask him for a cigarette, he will force the whole packet upon you. And beyond this, there is generosity in a deeper sense, a real largeness of spirit, which I have met with again and again in the most unpromising circumstances. Some of the journalists and other foreigners who traveled in Spain during the war have declared that in secret the Spaniards were bitterly jealous of foreign aid. All I can say is that I never observed anything of the kind. I remember that a few days before I left the barracks, a group of men returned on leave from the front. They were talking excitedly about their experiences and were full of enthusiasm for some French troops who had been next to them at Huesca. The French were very brave, they said, adding enthusiastically, "Más valientes que nosotros," braver than we are. Of course I demurred, whereupon they explained that the French knew more of the art of war, were more expert with bombs, machine guns, and so forth. Yet the remark was significant. An Englishman would cut his hand off sooner than say a thing like that. And that's all for the free version, friends. Apple is making transcripts of every episode automatically now to make somebody's job much easier. So anyway, if you'd like to listen to the entire 2.5-hour Barcelona adventure narrated by George Orwell's Homage to Catalonia, please subscribe to the show at patreon.com/filthyarmenian. You'll get over twice as many of these episodes, plus, for patrons only, a brief smoke break episode that's been very popular that I release several times a week, 5 to 15 minute review or reaction to a book, movie, TV show, topic of the day, and a bite-sized little adventure. So it's totally worth it if you subscribe, and keep the lights on here at Filthy Armenian Adventureland in this very important year. See you on the other side.